Welcome back to the Dan and Dani podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about the Joe Biden administration. We're going to be giving our review of the most impactful changes that Joe Biden has made so far and the ones he's intended on making. We'll give our opinion on them, and we'll show you what you should be doing in response to these changes. But before we get into that serious stuff, first things first, our shots.
We need our shots. All right, John, here you go.
Including John the cameraman.
And John is trying my very new favorite, Screwball whiskey.
And I'm drinking Western Sun Blueberry. Cheers to you guys. Yes.
Are we supposed to clink or something? Clink. Did I miss the memo?
We did, but it's too late now.
Oh, John does not look like he's feeling that too well. Oh, he likes it, yeah. He likes it.
There's
Never
no take two
mind.
with these shots.
Right.
There can only be one take or else the video will not turn out. All right, so let's dive into these changes and let's talk about how they're going to affect you. All right, so the first change that Joe Biden has already made is imposing a mask mandate on federal properties like federal courthouses and things like that, and also doing a 100-day masking challenge. So what's your thoughts on this change? Do you think this is good for the country or bad for the country?
To be honest, this is why me and you are so great together, because we have totally different opinions on this right here. So me, I'm a rule follower. Anytime somebody says to do something, the government, if the governor of the state is telling us to wear a mask, I'm going to wear a mask because I'm a sensitive person. And if I get yelled at, I'm going to just crawl into my little shell and cry. So I'd rather not get in trouble and not get kicked out of anywhere and embarrass myself and just wear my mask. Now, I don't like this. I hate it. But what can we do about it right now? I mean, write letters to the government? They're not going to listen to us right now. They're just trying to go with what the president says.
Oh, I got some great tactics to get around it, as you know. For example, we were recently taking an airplane to go to Las Vegas.
Oh,
and they always do
gosh.
that, there's a federal mask mandate. Everyone must wear a mask. I'm like, oh, yes, ma'am, I'll put on a mask. Then the plane takes off. They're not going to throw you out the window of the plane. They can't kick you off once it took off, so then you can do anything. So then I just take it off.
Just because they're not going to throw you off of the plane physically does not mean that if you cause a severe interruptance from other passengers, they will stop the plane and land it in their next stop. How could you not figure that out? It's all over YouTube.
Well, fortunately, though, if they were the type of person to do that, they'd be very scared of COVID. So I'd be like, oh, ma'am, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry about that. I promise it won't happen again. And then they won't give me any problems.
I'd be like, ugh, sir, get off of me.
Well, but what do you think overall? Do you think, aside from the effect on us, that this is positive, or do you think this is negative?
I think it's a negative thing, but only because it's just going to piss a lot of people off. And we've already had to wear masks for over a year before Biden actually came into office. So this isn't really fair, but I get it. I understand it, but I don't think it's completely fair.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think it's a real good change. The 100-day masking thing is a joke, in my opinion. Let's keep in mind we're now about 400 days into 14 days to slow the spread. You remember that? I think the 100-day masking challenge is going to be the same. Everybody knows at the end of the 100 days, it'll just be extended another 200 or 300 days. Likely, he's going to be recommending masks for 1 or 2 or 3 more years. I think it's really a permanent masking challenge, and it's not really time limited. So I think he should have just been honest about that. And also, I do think that with the vaccine, more and more doses coming out, cases going down, hospitalizations going down, that we're in a position where we don't really need it. And also, if you look at the science, there's only been one study on population level masking, and it shows that masks actually have a negative effect. So if you follow the science, masking makes you more likely to get COVID. So that's why I oppose it.
I mean, honestly, if they were to at least say if you have the vaccination, you don't have to wear a mask, then I would totally go get that vaccination right now. Do a lot of research first before I get it, but I'd go get it and hopefully not have to wear a mask anymore. But the thing that gets me is that he put it as the 100-day mask challenge. What is this, TikTok?
This
isn't a challenge. This is a fucking...
Challenge accepted, Joe Biden.
Yeah, right? Nobody wants to accept this challenge. We want to go back to our normal day.
Right. Well, because I do think that if somebody wants to wear a mask, they should be able to, but it should be voluntary. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think that there should at least be some benefit to getting the vaccination, not just you still have to wear a mask. That's not fair. Like, if we're doing this to our bodies, and technically we don't know what's in the vaccination. So if we're really getting this vaccination, we should be able to get something out of it.
Yes. So that gets a big thumbs down from both me and Dani. Fortunately, we got the tactics to get around this. I already told you how to get around it on an airplane.
Now, I got so mad at him, so don't take his advice. I was still scared that we were going to get kicked off because the flight attendant did notice he wasn't wearing a mask and did ask him to put it back on. And you know what he did? He said, okay. Took it right back off. Didn't even like keep it on for like 2 seconds. Swear to God. And stop doing that.
I've also mastered the art of getting around mask rules at the gym. So what I do is I kind of develop this spider sense for when the manager comes around.
Sometimes.
So when I'm lifting, I kind of put the mask down over my nose so I can breathe through my nose. Then when I sense somebody coming up, I just put it back up. So I've mastered the art of doing that.
It's a skill for sure.
Yes. But basically what I've learned is that if you take it off altogether, that's going to piss people off. But if you wear it in chin diaper position, you'll almost never get in trouble because you're still kind of wearing it. It's just not actually on your face. So that would be my recommendation. Chin diaper position always keeps you safe.
Just refer back to the South Park episode.
Yes. All right. Let's talk about the next change, ending the Keystone XL pipeline. For those of you guys who don't know what this is, this was a big pipeline that was going to transport a whole lot of oil and gas down to us in the United States from Canada. People were excited about this because it would have significantly lowered oil and gas prices, made your heat, made your electricity a lot cheaper. It was unpopular though because a lot of people thought it might have a bad environmental impact. So what's your thoughts on this? Do you think this is good or this is bad?
Honestly, I think it's bad because it would have made our stuff cheaper. And now we have to deal with bullshit out of all this.
Yes, exactly. Well, because I think everyone can agree, you know, paying more for your electricity, for your heat is always a bad thing. In Texas, we recently went through the Texas blackouts. Right here where we were living, we had no electricity and no heat for about a week.
Yeah, it was really bad, actually. No water and no gas after everything turned back on. So still no hot water and no way to cook food because our microwave short-circuited.
Now, basically, there were two causes for this. Number one, the windmills froze up, and the windmills generated a lot less electricity than they thought. Number two, the gas lines froze up. They basically didn't spend enough money to winterize the fossil fuel power plants or the renewable power plants. So this kind of affects us a little bit personally because if this pipeline were built, they might have saved enough money on fuel to afford winterizing everything, and they wouldn't have to rely so much on windmills, which typically go out when you need them most.
Honestly, they spent way too much money on building these windmills because not only did it affect what just happened with the blackout and the winter storm, but everybody now has to pay higher electricity bills.
Exactly. In Austin, right here where we live, we have some of the highest electricity rates in the country, but yet some of the least reliable service. And policies like this are the reason why. So I would say overall, a lot of people on the other side are saying that the Keystone XL pipeline might be bad for the environment. They're shipping oil and gas down from Canada, which pollutes more than most oil and gas, and a lot of people think that's a bad thing. What's your thoughts on that, though, about the pollution, environmental, climate change aspect of it?
I mean, I'm not a go green type of person, but I do believe that it could in the future. I have done research where too much pollution could create smog, right? Smog.
Yeah, exactly.
And it could be really unbeneficial to your health in the future. So yeah, I'm not like, save the environment, let me hug a tree, but definitely try to see about what we can do to help that.
Because I think a lot of people that oppose it, they believe like, oh, if they build out the Keystone XL, they're going to ship all this oil down. If they don't build it, they're just going to shut down the oil well, and they won't even make that oil. But it doesn't really work like that. You should realize there are other pipelines. They're just a more indirect route. So all that oil, all that gas is still coming down. It'll just take more oil and gas to transport it in a more wasteful and indirect way. So it's not really helping the environment as much as people think, in my opinion, and that's the reason why I give it a thumbs down.
I do too, honestly.
Yes.
That's not really my thing.
Not off to a good start, Joe Biden. You got 2 thumbs down. All right, number 3, rejoining the Paris Climate Change Agreement.
This one.
So for those of you guys who aren't familiar with this, I'll explain it real quick. The Paris Climate Change Agreement is a big international agreement on climate change. The gist of it is that the United States, Europe, Japan, the other richer countries in the world make a big commitment to significantly reduce their carbon emissions. That basically means that they're going to pollute less. Developing countries like China and India essentially make no commitment to reduce their carbon emissions in the near future, and they'll only have to do that in the far future after all of us are dead. Another thing you should know about the Paris Climate Change Agreement, Donald Trump pulled the United States out of the Paris Climate Change Agreement. Joe Biden rejoined it. However, many countries right now are not meeting their commitments under the Paris Climate Change Agreement, and we'll show you a little bit more of the details of that later. But what's your thoughts on this? Do you think it's a good thing to rejoin the Paris Climate Change Agreement?
I mean, obviously it's showing in research that only 2 places are actually going for what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, let's call up the site we were looking at previously. So, yeah, this is what we were looking at right before this video here. And you can see essentially the only ones that are meeting their commitment under the Paris Climate Agreement are Morocco and the Gambia. I don't know where that is. But
and then the U.S. is way, way over here in the critically insufficient part. So you can see how that's working out for us.
So essentially, this is an agreement where 99% of the people are not following it. But nevertheless, there are some things that people say on the pro side. People say that there has to be some type of international agreement if one country reduces carbon emissions, but every other country does, and it doesn't really work. So there's got to be some kind of global agreement, and there's no way anybody would ever agree to an actual real binding agreement. So that's what people have to say in favor of it. But what are your thoughts on this? Do you think we should rejoin, or do you think we should skip that?
In my opinion, I think that we should just skip it.
Well, because I do see kind of the good intentions behind this, that there has to be some kind of international agreement. But if you're in an agreement where 99% of the people are breaking the agreement, it's not really an agreement.
Exactly.
An agreement is enforced. Like, let's say if we have an agreement that I'm going to buy your house, but there's no consequences if I don't, and most of the time I won't, it's not really an agreement. It's more of a suggestion that mostly isn't followed. That's why I don't think it's really a good thing. If there is an agreement, it should be a real agreement that everybody follows. If 99% of people are breaking an agreement, there's no point in joining.
I agree with that, actually. So this one, another thumbs down.
Ooh, man, bad start.
And
Okay.
I was actually rooting for Biden. I'm not gonna lie for a little, but I'm independent, so I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. So just because I say that I was rooting for somebody does not mean I'm completely on their side.
So Joe Biden has a chance for some thumbs up right here. This is going to be one where it has multiple parts, so we'll go through each part individually. Joe Biden has proposed a $1.9 trillion stimulus package. Very big, very complicated, so we'll talk about each part individually. All right, so let's break down each part individually. So the first part will be everybody, I believe, making less than $100,000 a year, or most people in the U.S., will get a $1,400 stimulus payment. Just free money, no questions asked for most people. What's your thoughts on free money?
I gotta worry about what I'm gonna have to do after I get this free money. Am I gonna have to pay it back with my taxes? Is it gonna go out in another way? You know what I mean? Like I'm always worried about what is gonna happen if I get this free money, because nothing's ever just free.
Yeah, because I do think that on the one hand, a lot of people were disrupted, they're laid off or whatever, and they really need some kind of help. But on the other hand, you're right. There's no such thing as free money. If you're getting $1,400 today, in order to pay for that, the government is going to have to charge you much more than $1,400 in the future in taxes, similar to a credit card. Like you can get free money today, but that payment's coming in the future when you have to start making payments.
I do have one other thing to say about that, though. For people that didn't lose their jobs and they just threw the money at us, I get you want to help people, but the ones that didn't need it now we're reliable on paying that back, and that's something that we didn't need.
Yeah, and I do agree with that too, because I think that some people really needed this, where like some people might have starved to death if they didn't get this.
Or this money that they gave me could have gone to them.
Exactly. 80% of the people that got this didn't really need it, and they probably would have been better off paying less taxes and not getting any stimulus.
Yeah,
like us.
exactly.
Not entirely thumbs down, but I think it should have been better targeted.
I think it should have been better organized.
Yeah. Yeah, that is another negative of it as well, and that's a really good point. For the first stimulus payment, it took them a very long time to actually get it out, where the first stimulus payment hasn't entirely been paid yet.
Yeah.
It'll eventually take years, and by the time this actually goes out entirely, the whole thing is going to be over. So that is another downside of stimulus payments.
Yep.
All right, so here's some more goodies we get. Extra $400 in unemployment benefits for those people that are unemployed and qualify for state unemployment. That basically means you get your regular unemployment and the federal government kicks in an extra $400. What's your thoughts on that?
I mean, to be honest, I've never actually had unemployment before, but if that's extra money that you get for free, because unemployment is money that they're giving to actually help you, then yeah, bring it on.
Yeah, and in my opinion, this is a lot better targeted than just the blanket free money of the stimulus payments. This is going to people for a limited amount of time that lost their jobs, so you know that there's some kind of need for this. So in my opinion, this is probably better than the blanket free money. The downside of this is that especially with the last one where there was a bigger unemployment top-off, some people made more from unemployment than they made from their job. That's really where I see the downside to unemployment benefits. Of course, I haven't had a job in 15 years, so I mostly see this from the employer's perspective. But from the employer's perspective, it's very difficult to get people to come back to work if they get more money by not working. And that ultimately leads to everybody being less wealthy because everyone's doing less work and producing less goods and services. So I would say mostly a thumbs up, but nobody should make more money from not working than working.
And I think the only thing I have a pro really about the unemployment for $400 extra is like the unemployment offices are completely like going crazy chaotic right now because everybody's trying to get unemployment, especially from day one of COVID.
Yeah.
So the extra $400 will keep them good until they can get in touch with somebody for more if they need it.
Yeah, and I don't even know how it works now. Hopefully they can just file online, but yeah, that's another good point too. It's kind of a weird process. If you're like a new timer doing it, you really would want to go on the phone to like set everything up. But if you have like a current thing that you're constantly like already doing, then you can go online to do everything because that's where they require for you to do your job search and go ahead and request your next payment. Yeah. All right. So overall, I would say mostly good. Mixed reviews on that one.
Yeah.
Next, state government bailouts. So that means big bailouts for states like California and New York that spend heavily. Texas and other states that don't have an income tax and don't have as big of a state government will also get a bailout too. It's just not needed as much. What's your thoughts on that? Should the federal government bail out the states?
No. No.
Well, because on the other side, just to be the devil's advocate, what people are saying is like, oh, well, Illinois is going to go bankrupt. They're going to have to lay off all these teachers. All these poor government workers are going to have to take a pay cut.
Well, why did all these people not be organized enough to not have this happen in the first place?
That's a great question, Illinois. Why is that? Well, and that's a great point too, because while every state will be getting a bailout, not every state needs the bailout equally, and everyone's going to be paying for it equally. States like Illinois is the most egregious example. They've just mismanaged their state finances for years. Now the federal government comes in and rescues them.
That shouldn't have to happen, though.
Exactly. They shouldn't be rewarded for
blowing their money. That's not fair.
Right?
Because what if Texas goes into a really bad situation and the government's like, no, we're not going to help you. Like, hello, bitch, you just helped out Illinois when they were the ones being stupid with their money. Like, really? Like, that's what I feel like. If they're helping them out, then other places might not get help whenever they're just giving help to these other people.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it'd be a lot more fair if, say, Illinois is in trouble, if Illinois raises their taxes.
Thank you, yeah.
Right? And if you don't like high taxes, you can just move out of Illinois. So that way, it's a win-win for everybody.
Exactly.
All right, so we give state government bailouts a thumbs down.
Definitely.
So next one, expanded child tax credit. We'll put in the graphic exactly how much that is. I'm not sure exactly how much right now, but the child tax credit, Joe Biden wants it to go up. What's your thoughts on that? Should people pay less taxes if they have kids?
It depends. And does that mean being taken out of their paychecks?
No, this wouldn't be the payroll taxes. These would
Okay.
be the income taxes. So essentially, you would get a credit. That means that if you don't make that much money, it could actually be refunded to you. So you might get a bigger refund if your income isn't that much. And if you pay a lot of taxes, you would just pay less in taxes.
And it would be reviewed every year?
Uh, Basically, you would get that credit every year until your child turns 18.
Well, I think that if that was to be a thing, I think that there should be a yearly review to make sure that everything is still good in place.
Yeah,
To
where
make it
doesn't just go
fair,
indefinitely.
It's kind of like now what they're doing with Health and Human Services Commission, where people say that they get all this free food money and free income from the government, but there's no proof that they're using it for themselves and not buying drugs. And so they want people to get drug tests and stuff like that. So I feel like if you're getting this, like, you should show that, like, your kid is going to school or your kid is, like, you know, like something, not just from getting the money. Because what if you're not using it on your child? Like, a lot of people in divorces, you know, they pay child support, and a lot of people don't use that child support money on their kid.
Yeah, and that is true. And just practically, it is a real problem with it. A lot of people, I mean, most people are probably going to spend at least the amount of credit on their child, like $3,000 or $4,000 or whatever it is. But there will be some people who take that credit and go buy crack. And there's no way to tell or stop that.
And I think that there should be at least some sort of, like, rule that you have to follow or do in order to get that every year.
And I do think that might be a better way to do it. If rather than everybody getting it, maybe if you apply for it and if you really need it, like if you're really low income, then you can get it. In my opinion, a married couple that's making $300,000 a year probably doesn't need this. And in my opinion, a married couple making $300,000 a year with kids probably shouldn't be paying more taxes than the same couple without kids. I don't know. What's your thoughts on that, though?
In my opinion, when I think about expand child tax credit and thinking about how you get this is because you have children, okay, that just makes any woman go out and get pregnant with any man and then they just have a kid pop out right there and then they have to pay lower taxes. That's not fair.
I mean, that's a really good point, too, because everyone knows that people respond to incentives. And if you do incentivize people having more kids, they're probably going to have more kids, maybe kids they can't afford. And it might be putting them in a place that's worse in the net overall.
Exactly. Because honestly, like, those foster homes are overcrowded.
Yeah.
And that's normally what you just said happens. Like, don't even take care of them.
On the other hand, though, having a kid is expensive, and this does help out a lot of people that need the money that do have kids. So I wouldn't say it's as complete a thumbs down as a state government bailout, but I would say this should be better targeted.
I'm in the middle.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that it's okay that he's doing this, that he's giving this, but I feel like there should be rules to it.
So this is big, this is complicated, this whole stimulus package. I would say, just to summarize everything, maybe 75% thumbs down?
I'm 50-50 on this.
Okay, Macy gives it 50-50. I give it 75% thumbs down. Fifth change, increasing the minimum wage to $15 an hour. What's your thoughts on this?
If they had done this back whenever I was working at Taco Cabana, I probably would have stayed. But no, it took me years.
But would that be a good thing? You would still be working at Taco Cabana today.
No.
Yeah, right?
But I'm not going to lie. $15 an hour can really get you a lot in living costs here in Texas because it's not cheap to live in Texas at all. So you got to think about what businesses. Okay, so I was at Taco Cabana for 4 freaking years. The most money I ever saw from them was $8.50 an hour, and that was also working overnight shift. That's ridiculous. And I had way more skills than everybody there except the managers.
And there's a lot of people in positions like that. And in Austin is more expensive than some areas of Texas, but there's areas like San Francisco or New York City where,
oh, that's crazy.
Man, it is tough. Like if you're making $7 or $8 an hour, you won't even be able to buy food. It would be like a real survival living. So in places like that, like San Francisco, it might make a little more sense. So that's the argument in favor. On the other side, the argument against, I see more the argument against because I'm paying this, or I would be if I did have employees. If the minimum wage increases to $15 an hour and they're paying $7 an hour, the only way they can stay in business is by firing half their people. I mean, that's just how that math works.
And that's true.
Yeah.
But it's also, fair because if you can't afford to pay those people and that's not your choice to raise the minimum wage, then you don't have a choice.
So I mean, there would be. I mean, that's what some people think, that your business shouldn't exist if you can't pay a $15 minimum wage.
I don't think that's true at all.
But that will practically be the effect of it. Lots of businesses are going to go under, especially businesses like fast food restaurants or things that are very dependent on minimum wage labor. Those that don't go under are going to fire people. They will reduce hours. And most academic research shows that increases in the minimum wage lead to employees taking home less overall compensation. You make more per hour, but fewer people are working, and they're working fewer hours.
Actually, that's true. Yeah, they're going to cut your hours if they have to give you that much money.
So this is one where I would say is pretty actionable, where you don't have to even participate in this if you have a business and you don't want to even participate in this. I made another video about this, but because of this and many other reasons, I don't recommend you ever employ anybody on a W-2, and that you always employ people on a 1099. Basically, the distinction between them: W-2, you have to pay a minimum wage and you have to pay payroll taxes. 1099, the minimum wage doesn't apply and you don't have to pay any payroll taxes. Many other advantages to 1099, but if you do want to employ somebody for less than the minimum wage, you can still do that. You just need to make them a 1099 contractor.
Okay, I didn't even know that.
Another good alternative that I think a lot of businesses are going to do is automation. Let's say if you run a fast food restaurant right now, you see this a lot in San Francisco and New York and cities that have already done this. It doesn't really make sense to have a minimum wage person working the cash register anymore. Instead, what you see is kiosks where people just type in their own order. If you're a business that depends on the minimum wage right now, think about how you could transition people to contractors. Think about how you could automate their job so that way a machine does their job instead. Or potentially how you could have somebody overseas do this job instead, where minimum wage requirements are a lot lower. Lots of different ways around this. Because we see this coming forward in advance, you don't need to participate in this if you don't want to.
All right, so what do you give this one?
I'd give it pretty much a full thumbs down. I was thinking about 50-50, but I think a full thumbs down. The reason for that is it's a lose-lose for everybody. Employers make less money, and really the people that this was intended to help will ultimately be hurt the worst by this, I think. Just because I know my reaction if I was employing a lot of people on a minimum wage, I would need to stay in business, so I would likely be forced to fire people or reduce their hours if my payroll suddenly doubled overnight. And I know that that's just the way the math of business works.
No, I get that. I honestly don't have an opinion on this one for a thumbs up or thumbs down because this doesn't really relate to me.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't relate to you now, but when you start employing people soon, it will.
I know.
All right, final change. Forgiving $10,000 to $50,000 of student loans. This change hasn't happened yet. It's not entirely clear that it will happen, but it will likely be in that range, and it's likely that there'll be some type of student loan forgiveness. So what's your thoughts on this? Do you think it's a good thing to forgive student loans?
Yes, because I am one of these people that need it. I have the amount that they're giving. I'm in that category. So if this were to happen, it would really help me a lot. Because when it comes to getting other things taken away, like finance-wise, like in bankruptcy situations, you still have to pay your student loans because it's a government loan. So for me, like, even just paying my student loans has been kind of hard. So I feel like if this were to be just washed away, because to be honest, I only did 2 semesters in college. I shouldn't feel like I have to pay that entire amount back. You know what I mean? Like, I did spend it on the stuff that I needed it for, books, stuff for school, you know, but everything went back and, you know, stuff like that. So in my opinion, I think this is a good thing.
Yeah, because I know there's a lot of people in positions like that. Like, yeah, people that may have only gone to a semester to a school but still have significant debt. Even worse, people that went to grad school and have $250,000 or $300,000, $400,000 in debt.
That could take forever to pay off too.
Exactly. Basically, they're not even making enough to pay their interest payments. They're essentially indentured servants that will never pay off their debt. I can kind of see why that becomes unsustainable at some point, and at some point you might need to forgive it. On the other side, though, just keep in mind there is no free money. Whatever forgiveness you get, you're going to have to pay to forgive other people in the future. So, I mean, what's your thoughts? Given that for $10,000 of forgiveness, you'll probably have to pay $20,000 to $30,000 in additional taxes, but this will be over 20 to 30 years over your lifetime. Would it still be worth it?
Oof. That depends on a lot of situations.
Yeah, and this is where it becomes, people will still be in favor of it, some people might be, but it becomes a much harder decision if you think about the costs as well as the benefits.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I'd have to see way more information about the benefits to this in the long run. Like, it's kind of like paying a home loan. It's gonna go out to 20 to 30 years out of your lifetime, but you're still paying it.
And I do think that's why, that's why I can kind of understand some of the support for this. In my opinion, this isn't really the best way to do this, but I can see where people are coming from too. There's just so many people where they have so much student debt, it's just hopeless. There's no way they're going to pay it.
Yeah.
It doesn't benefit them to keep trying to make payments. And even for the lender, the lender needs to give up because they're so deep into it that they just need to eventually get on with their lives and declare that it's hopeless to recover payments from this.
Yeah.
I think a way better way, rather than forgiving this, would be to allow people with student debt to declare bankruptcy. That way, it would be targeted to the people that are the deepest in, and the people with rich parents who don't really need this, or the people with only a little bit of debt who have a really big income to pay that debt off. In my opinion, they shouldn't really get it. But let's say somebody went to grad school for poetry. Someone went to poetry grad school at Harvard, and now they're 400 grand in debt. They only make 20 grand a year, not enough to pay their interest payments. They should be allowed to declare bankruptcy.
Oh, yeah.
And declaring bankruptcy, it would go on their credit, so it's not like they're getting off scot-free, but there's an escape hatch if things get completely hopeless. That's what I think would be the better way to help people out.
I mean, in all honesty, governors, United States, people in general, always try to peer pressure you into going into college. That is their main goal, is for you to get educated and to go to college. It's told to everybody, everywhere. Everybody wants you to get into college. So we're taking on the risk of debt because the government is telling us that we need to be educated to get certain jobs. So how is that fair that we come out making less than what we want and not being able to pay these things back?
Right? Exactly. So if you're younger, if you're thinking about going to college,
don't do it.
Yes, it's a scam. Don't get involved in this. And that's kind of the most negative part of this, in my opinion, because now the government has set the precedent of forgiving debt. Everyone in the future will expect their debt to be forgiven, so they're going to max out the debt even more than they did in the past. And more people, unfortunately, are going to fall for this college scam because of this. So don't even participate in it. Don't even participate in this. That's your action step. Don't go to college. If you're in college right now, drop out.
If you're going to go to college because you really want to, pay up front. That way you have no debts. If you have a rich family, that will pay for your college. Most parents pay, have a savings trusted for your college fund whenever you get old enough. Use that. Don't use a loan.
Exactly. And a lot of people think that going to college is an investment. And maybe if you're going to college to become an engineer or a doctor, that's an investment.
Yes.
If you're going to college for poetry or theology, that's not an investment. That's just like buying an awesome car. That's just something that you want to buy, which won't increase your income. You shouldn't take out consumer debt to do that. You should save up the $250,000 or 400 grand or whatever it is in advance, which likely means you'll never go. And that's good.
Oh my God.
All right, so these are the changes overall. That's our review of the Joe Biden administration, changes so far and potential future changes coming up soon. So now it's time for the overall rating.
What's
your
say,
overall rating on the Joe Biden administration? 100% thumbs out, yes.
There's nothing that was even 50% except for one of mine that was a rating.
Yeah.
Everything else is way lower. So if it's going to be an average, it would definitely be down.
Yeah. I would say so too. I would say mostly. I would actually go to 75% thumbs down. And the reason for that is we've kind of focused on the biggest changes. When you hear them one after another, it seems like everything's changing.
Yeah.
In the big picture, though, not that much has changed, and probably the changes won't be really huge. Probably nothing in our day-to-day life is going to change. Pretty much thumbs down on almost every change, but I don't think there's any huge changes. So I don't think it's going to be a disaster like some people are saying.
I think the only disaster is going to be the 100-day mask challenge.
Yes, let's make another video after the challenge ends where we can officially say goodbye to masks for good.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. All right, so that's our review of the Joe Biden administration so far. Some things you can do in response to these changes. Thank you guys for joining us. Leave us a thumbs up if you like this video. Share it with your friends. Leave us a comment. And until next time, we'll see you later.
Bye, guys.